Welcome back, Aussie. Can you hear now?
Yeah, it went. And those directives here really choose get words on, get
But we have the wiki, don't we?
We do. That's right, and like a typical first day teacher, I get to shuffle all over looking for the syllabus to pass it out to those of you that don't have it, sound like a nervous idiot, and laugh at myself. So this is actually a series of 9 classes, and not all of them are necessary, but I am handing out the list of... Aussie, don't move when I'm handing you stuff. I think I probably dropped something in a brim now. Okay, you got the syllabus. Did you get the reference now? Okay. Okay, so does everybody have one? You should have a syllabus and a reference. It's because you're special. Here you go. Okay. Now hopefully everybody's got everything. Okay, so because of the way that I found most useful in learning how to do haiku, what I'm going to do is the first part of each session, I'm going to read a section of the book Seeds from a Birch Tree, Writing Haiku and the Spiritual Journey by Clark Strand. And then after the selective readings, we will have time to discuss that and to practice writing haiku on our own. So if you have questions, write them down so that they can be asked after. Otherwise, I'm going to lose track of my place and we're going to go way off yonder and not do what was intended. Okay, the book opens with a poem by Matsuo Basho, who is one of the most well-known authors of haiku. And he was alive from 1644 to 1694. Life was very short back then. Cherry blossoms whirl, leaves fall, and the wind flits them both along the ground. We cannot arrest with our eyes or ears what lies in such things. Were we to gain mastery over them, we would find that the life of each thing had vanished without a trace. And then Mr. Strand gives us his introduction. One morning last spring, on my way to work, I passed a broken flower pot waiting to be picked up with somebody's garbage. In New York City, it's not impossible to notice sometimes what people throw away, what they consider useless or simply old. That morning, it was a flower pot. As I passed it, I looked down. There was dirt inside. My immediate thought was, how could anyone throw dirt away? The dirt wasn't broken. It ought to have been used for something else. But a moment later I had another thought. In the same way that dirt couldn't be broken, it also couldn't be thrown away. Dirt was where everything returned to. It was the away to which you threw. The Bible tells us that when God created man, he fashioned him from the dust of the earth, molding his body like clay. Then God blew breath inside that clay and gave it life. That breath is the human spirit. It comes at birth and departs at the end of life. Nevertheless, in my opinion, God's greatest gift to human beings was clay, because with clay came the whole basis for our spiritual life, which consists of realizing our fundamental oneness in all things, our unity with all of nature. For there is nothing that is not included in clay. There is nothing that dust does not embrace. In a sense, Seeds from a Birch Tree is about nothing but dust and clay, because all things including ourselves have their being in the earth. Take a step in any direction, it surrounds you. It enters into everything you do. But for all that, in form at least, it is also a book about writing haiku. For haiku is the one poetic form in which all of world literature that concerns itself primarily with nature, the one form of poetry that makes nature a spiritual path. Haiku began as the opening stanza of a Japanese verse game called Renga, in which several poets took turns composing links in a chain of 100 verses. The opening verse was called the hoku, and the rule was that it be 17 syllables and include a seasonal theme. Following the hoku, the successive links were made in such a way that it felt somehow inevitable reading from one verse to another in the chain. It wasn't always possible to figure out logically how one verse was related to another, but one could always feel something like an invisible thread running through them. It was my object to link the chapters of Seeds from a Birch Tree in a similar way. If I had to identify the thread that runs through the book, I would have to say that it is sometimes haiku, sometimes the story of my life, and often both at once, for that is the nature of the spiritual path. It happens to someone, somewhere in a very particular way, yet the episodes are not chronological. Often, in retrospect, it was the things that happened at the beginning that seemed most important later on. And if the reader should notice that many of the episodes concern things, events, people, even parts of myself, that seemed insignificant at the time, and only later were realized to be essential parts of the path of haiku, then he or she would not be off the mark. In a world where everything is living, nothing can be thrown away. Where would you throw it to? We go then to what's called the sketch from life. Sometimes we look at a scene and after a moment just keep looking because it is beautiful, or interesting, or sad, or for no reason at all, but just for the sake of looking. Sometimes a moment, just as it is, seems so full of life it must have meaning, even though we may find it difficult to explain. In fact, the moment we try to explain, we stop looking, and a little color goes out of the world. Before we know it, the present has become the past, and we are somewhere else. By the end of the 19th century, Japanese haiku was on the brink of collapse. Dominated by established schools, each of which claimed to have the definitive rules, haiku had become the province of a literary elite who wrote by formula. Almost no one remembered the poet Basho's famous admonition, "Do not seek after the sages of the past." Almost no one remembered seek what they sought. Yes, it's very much like what they did with tea. Into this era came Masaoka Shiki, a talented young man with ideas of his own and a love of haiku that surpassed anything the 19th century poets could have understood. Shiki saw things freshly. In fact, freshness of vision became the guiding principle of his entire literary movement. Within 10 years, the established haiku masters were overthrown, and a new haiku, based on Shase, the sketch from life, had completely revitalized the art. Shase stressed direct observation in the manner of a landscape painter who carries his sketchbook to the field and draws exactly what he sees. More than realism, however, the sketch from life offered Shiki and his followers a way of seeing nature as though for the very first time. In America, as we come to the end of the 20th century, it is a questionable matter whether we ever really see nature at all. Most of us live our lives behind walls. We drive nearly everywhere we go. We work in temperature-controlled environments. When snow falls, we salt our driveways to melt it right away. Few, if any of us, know the names of more than 20 birds or flowers. Because we have forgotten nature, there is a feeling of loss at the heart of modern people. We try to fill the inner lack with wealth and power or with distraction, but this does no good at all. Each age has its own unique sadness. This, it seems to me, must be our own. Is it any wonder we have lost the meaning of our lives? The way of haiku is to return to nature. We accomplish this by letting nature back into our lives. As haiku poets, we begin simply by carrying a notebook and walking in nature every day. Then, gradually, we learn to sketch from life. At the end of each notebook I fill with haiku, I am always struck by how much more of the world I have seen, and how much more in love with life I have become. Back from the mountains. From the time I was a young child, I enjoyed long, solitary walks. I felt overwhelmed by the beauty of nature, a kind of mute wonder at the beginning of every autumn when the leaves changed color and began falling from the branches. In springtime, I struggled with the feeling that there was a language in the blossoming of trees. As the years passed, those feelings remained inside of me, growing layer upon layer with every passing season. One afternoon in early springtime, when I had been playing tennis all day, my high school girlfriend arrived in the bleachers with a small, flat package which she held on her lap until the match was over. The package contained a book of haiku which she offered to me, saying, "These reminded me of you." And so I unwrapped the package and opened the book to the following haiku by the Japanese poet ASA. Beginning of spring, the perfect simplicity of a yellow sky. It was late in the day. The tennis courts were on a hill, so when I looked up, I could see the sky extending far into the distance beyond the river. It was just as Isa had said, a yellow sky. That is how a haiku works. In 17 syllables, the poet captures a moment from the life of nature. Hello, Teddy. After reading the poem by Isa, I was hooked. I continued to write other kinds of poetry for some years, but gradually I came to write only haiku. Every day, every place I went. If I went into the woods, haiku went with me. If I woke in the middle of the night to find that my foot had come out from under the covers, a haiku would form in my mind. Perhaps I should have realized that was enough, but I was not content. I felt a spiritual longing that would not be satisfied with staying where I was. I took up the study of Zen Buddhism, first informally, with a Chinese hermit who taught only by example, and then later according to the traditional model of Japanese Zen. During those years, I frequently meditated through the night. When that was not enough, I organized a small group of Zen practitioners who were willing to meditate all weekend once a month. But finally, that too proved insufficient. So I left my wife, went to live in a Zen monastery, and eventually became a monk. The monastery schedule was rigorous, endless hours of meditation, silent meals eaten with chopsticks from lacquer bowls, and hard manual labor over rough mountain terrain. and there was the persistent demand by the abbot that I pass my koan or Zen riddle. I took the matter seriously, following the advice of one ancient master to carry the koan with me night and day. Altogether, in and out of the monastery, I did this for 12 years, during which time many other students passed their first koan and began to work through the traditional curriculum of 700 others. Finally, when I had given up, the answer came, but I no longer cared I had passed it. When my teacher presented me with the next in the series of traditional koans, I had to resist the sudden impulse to laugh. I knew nothing. The journey had doubled back to where it started, and so I left. At first I did not know what to do. I had given up everything to become a monk. I even gave up haiku because it seemed like a distraction from my spiritual life. When I finally also gave up the monkhood, it seemed as though there was nothing left. I had devoted my adult life to the study of Zen, and now it seemed I had stepped unexpectedly out the other side to find myself in an unfamiliar land. There was an enormous vacuum in my life. But gradually something started to happen. It seemed like nothing at first. I simply began taking long daily walks to lose myself in nature, and slowly I began writing haiku once again. My true practice had always been writing haiku, but it took many years in the interim to rediscover the simplicity of that. Haiku was not an ideology. That is the essence of haiku art. Because haiku demands a fresh, creative response to each new situation, and because it places images before ideas, it is guarded from becoming a religion. Rather, haiku is a spiritual path. Back from the mountains, a yellow handrail guides me down the subway stairs. Beginner's mind. One day a visitor asked Senno Rikyu to explain the secret of performing the Japanese tea ceremony. Rikyu answered, "In summer suggest coolness, in winter a feeling of warmth. Lay the charcoal so that it heats the water and make a pleasing bowl of tea. That is all." The guest was disappointed, however, and complained, "But everyone knows that." Rikyu only replied, "Serve tea in this way, and perhaps I will become your student." As technical instruction, Rikyu's words are a disappointment. Their spirit, however, suggests a mind which is simple, straightforward, and clear. It is the mind of a man who, having mastered his art, has given up that mastery in order to become like a beginner again. A haiku is a 17-syllable poem about the season, arranged in 3 lines of 5, 7, and 5 syllables, and balanced on a pause. A haiku presents one event from life happening now. However much we may say about haiku, its history, or its various schools, it is difficult to go beyond these 3 simple rules: form, season, and present mind. Even a lifetime of practice cannot exhaust them, and we may sometimes find they are difficult to follow even after 20 or 30 years. Despite the subtlety of these guidelines, I have often found that when I give workshops and retreats, at least one of the participants is able to write a haiku as good as any as I have seen. When this happens, everyone is moved. Even those whose efforts have been less than successful feel as though something has happened to them. We could say in such cases that everyone has been served a pleasing bowl of tea. Some weeks or months later, however, the author will say, "I haven't been able to write another haiku, at least not as good as the one I wrote before." When this happens, my advice is always the same. Don't worry about success. Just return to the beginning and see what happens. In the year before he died, the Japanese poet Matsuo Basho wrote the following verse: "Chrysanthemums bloom in a gap between the stones of a stonecutter's yard." A Japanese critic once said that a poem like this, which is plain but evocative, can be written only by a total amateur or a great master. As beginners, we may feel some confusion when we read a statement such as this. How could a poem by Basho, often called the greatest haiku master, have just as easily been composed by a complete amateur? We want beginners to be awkward and masters to be great. But at the end of his life, Basho wrote this very fresh beginner's poem about something he saw. This is rather extraordinary. It may run counter to our expectations about mastery, but it illustrates the fundamental point about the haiku mind. It is available right from the start of practice. In fact, it may be more available to the beginner than to the person who has been practicing for some time. The more we learn about haiku, the more tempted we may be to think of ourselves as experts. If we go too far in that direction, however, our poems lose their freshness. What was once as simple as looking at chrysanthemums blooming in a gap between stones will have become an intellectual exercise. For this reason, it is far better to retain the wakeful, open mind of the beginner than to accumulate mere knowledge about technique. Rikyu understood this point, and so did Basho. Though both men were well educated and understood all the intricacies of their art, each held first to the value of a clear, open mind, even at the end of life. Seasonal, direct, and clear, the haiku form itself expresses the fundamental truth about human life. Our appreciation of this truth grows only deeper as we follow the passing of every season. Therefore, although the 17-syllable haiku is very brief, only the length of a breath, its practice may last a lifetime. And he closes that section with Adirondack rain, walking barefoot over rocks and little mushrooms. And there is one final piece to read before we can discuss and try writing our own, and that is the caterpillar's web. Caterpillar's web, invisible to passers caught in its weak trap. The caterpillar's web is actually only a single weak thread. In late May, in the northeastern United States, many thousands of these small creatures, called inchworms by most people, lower themselves down indiscriminately from the branches. Only someone who is not in a hurry will notice the tiny green body suspended below a shade tree. Others walk right through, unaware of the small claim laid upon them by a thread. Now, this poem that we were given at the start of this section was written by a 14-year-old high school student from Tenafly, New Jersey, and it was his first haiku. So, with that, we're going to end the reading bit, and we can start discussing and trying to write one. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, it's very, very like looking through a new lens and focusing. No, I don't hear anybody. Okay, I will be right back then. Now you're all loud. But I can hear you now. Hooray! You could write a haiku about your local climate, I'm sure, because that has a lot to do with seasons. Oh, okay. Was he able to hear anything I'd read then?
He can hear, he just wanted to be able to talk.
Oh, okay.
Where did you go? I can't see you. I think you went through the floor. Oh, there you go. Oh, what are you doing?
He's playing with different poses.
Stop that. You look like a deformed snake over there right now. You're like,
Somebody should write a haiku about that.
Creative process and we give that.
well, I think are we waiting for Morgan or?
Yeah, we can wait for Morgan.
Teddy, I don't think the cuddles in those actually work.
No, the cuddles in those work because I cuddled my own alt once just to see if they worked because I was bored and curious.
I never can get them to work. I've tried. I didn't know you had alt steady.
I know, I just wanted to sound like a sad joke.
Oh.
I don't see mine.
Yes, now I can hear you. I adjusted the volume. I had it way up because I thought, oh, I can't hear them. Why? And then relogged. Like, oh, I'm lagging. Bless you. Yes.
And you said that there's a visual world. There seems to be cognitively speaking. The haiku begins with an image contemplating something. Would it be like, would you be observing nature and projecting
It would be. It could be either subjective or objective. Like, later in the book, it actually gives an example about the different ways a haiku will sound based on the viewpoint. Because it was talking about water ripples. So your haiku is going to sound very different if you're writing about, okay, just there's ripples on a pond versus what you think the ripples are doing or the way the ripples make you feel.
okay, then if it's a return to the nature, should I abide by trying
I would start with not trying to put anything into what you're seeing. Just write what you see. Let me find the page with that Basho chrysanthemum one, because that was a perfect one to actually think about. So the chrysanthemum's blue. Then the next line, in a garden, in a gap between the stones. And then the next line, of a stonecutter's yard. Yep, because yes, I can. Here is the reference. Here is the syllabus. Bless you. I have not had time to write any haiku today, but this is one that I wrote and I showed Jaeger on the 10th. So that's one of my own. Okay. So what I would like people to do is to try writing one of their own. And then if you're brave, share it. Yes. I will post another one. Yes. Yes, it is. I would sketch first. That's the way that I started. I was actually started on writing haiku when I was 6. I am by no means a master yet, but I have been asked many times to do this kind of thing, so. Exactly. Yes. Try one now. It can be about anything. If you want to write it about cheesecake, write a haiku about cheesecake. Yes. Summer breeze flows through, strawberries in the garden. Ladybug climbs vines.
Nice.
Very nice. What did you say, Teddy?
I thought, can I say it start with I or we? Like, I've just never seen one that started with one, so.
You could. I miss the gray smoke, the hazy cloud of my mind. Goodbye, coffin nails. Thinking about cigarettes? It's a very good one, actually.
Yay. Would have the right amount of syllables?
Let's see. Mm-hmm. Jaegers. Desk light slithers quotes. Night's gloom faint reminder. Another citation needed. That's a very powerful one, Jaeger.
It's about research.
Yeah, I got it. That one brought back all of the papers I've ever had to do.
Tell me
That would be the final paper season.
that is what I'm going to cover.
Mm-hmm.
and make a board with it.
That would be cool.
Yeah, just but the what we do is make a big board of stuff.
That is an excellent idea. And it's a bit more lasting than playing Renga. Let's see. Fuzzy black kitten. Warm yellow sunbeam flop here. Happy black kitten. Oh, Morgan. I have no thought now, and yet I cannot lose the quietness of mind. Ooh.
That was
Ooh. Of course, it would also depend on his schedule. Snert lines the gnarled path, sloshing boots trudging unsure, timid tracks in earth. Ambers, sometime, another time now, our time is always ticking, yet no man can rest. Mm-hmm. Empty words sound bitter as they slither from your forked tongue, gliding past my ears. Ooh. That was a good one, Kino. I can tell. When I'm mad, I'm going to give her everything, and then she's going to write a haiku, and then she's going to read you the haiku, because she has a very sharp tongue, and so.
Morgan is amazing. That's what Morgan is. He does sound a bit lightly abusive, doesn't he? Something about reprimanding someone via haiku is it's a pleasing little package full of cyanide, basically.
Yes.
Beautiful.
I try to keep minutes in the haikus format.
I save mine to a note card if that's helpful too. Because I figure every time I make my class, I might as well save it.
That's a very good idea.
Yes. But everyone is cards.
Everybody. Well, I just figure since make note cards inside Second Life, might as well do that.
This
whatever.
is true.
They can be about cat butts. Why couldn't they be about cat butts?
What I gathered from this session, I don't know if I'm just speak for my notes, is that haiku basically comes from contemplating something that is in the present, right?
Correct. Although, at another time, you might want to try bringing the past to the present. That might be a fun exercise for another day.
To see how one comes to
Mm-hmm. There's got to be a male version of a mistress, but what that would be called, I don't know.
Well, isn't mistress the female version of master?
yes.
Yes. So, okay, I guess it would be a master, but that's just
Yeah.
creepy. English.
It just sounds different because it's like
Mistresses, isn't it mistresses? I'm lost.
what?
Stop breaking my brain.
I didn't.
No, I know. It's just, you're just getting blamed for it.
I am cat. You can blame it on me.
Oh yeah, well, cats.
Wow. We have, 3 at least right now, so we're due for some explode.
Yes.
Well, we have Karen, myself, and Amber.
That is a lot of text.
No, I get what you mean. I don't know what the way. Google it. Yeah, you almost gibberish the haiku. I am so pleased about this right now. Smacking my head against the keyboard, the haiku.
Can you use your own made-up words?
Yes.
So I said otherwise earlier, so yes. That is not a real word. Okay, I lived in Maine for most of my life, and we know a fuckload about snow. So if snot was a word relating to snow, we would know. So no. Wiktionary? I refuse to accept something called a Wiktionary. Take your bullshit and go elsewhere. I am aware of the breakdown of it, but I think it's stupid. Oh, the languages. Wiktionary.
And then a lot for mistress. Really, the sounds.
Roommate. Wow.
There is something that we need to sit and talk about.
Hey, Rich, please.
Hello, Tails.
Hello there.
Oh my goodness.
Bloof narg wasa yig. Chote ranu kaz drixione sig. Mukt fudderu chiz. I like that.
Morgan made it up. He asked if you could use. It sounded like bastardization, like Klingon and Orcish, like together.
Yes.
Yes.
Morgan, can I ask you a favor? Can I put your gibberish haiku on a texture for over in Ibex, please? In the little RP library area, please, please, please? No, I just... Does everything there have to be serious? Come on!
said it was being archived earlier, so no, she's all of the haikus here will go up here, but Ame wants a specific one for another sim. The Catfort poem thing will go up here, yes. No, seriously though.
I think not so.
By the look. Oh, the Catfort poems. It's open to interpretation. You might also just get eaten by a Lovecraftian horde. It's okay.
So contemplating the present, you are being taken by the dire forces.
Being eaten by a Gru. You have been eaten by a Gru. A Gru?
That's a lot of haikus that I could put on a texture.
We should also put them in the bookshelf on a note card. Or shove it in there.
Yes.
I hope I didn't miss any.
By Vegas too.
There's carrying notebooks.
You asked me what that is, get out of your damn time anymore. Oh my goodness.
I think so too. Yes.
I can't even write. I need to be upset with Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy's a part of you, and you are part of nature, therefore. He can't even. He said so in the haiku. Oh my god. Jimmy's are giggling. Yes, they are.
Okay, well, I think that I should end the session now because my audio recording is getting rather long. But definitely, if you want to write a haiku every day, keep it. Feel free to next session bring it and share it.
Yes.
Tune in next time
Yes.
for another I had one because I was mad, and then I didn't hide anymore.
So here's my first one.
Okay.
I only went out of punching and healing. He's gonna vanish just because the class ended.